Welcome to the Veil of Truth, your passport to the stories that matter, globe showing Europe, Africa. I'm thrilled you're here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from around the world. Chapter 1, An Invitation to Turnbridge. The late July sky over London was swollen with rain as Hercule Poirot settled himself at his desk in the familiar tranquility of 123B Baker Street. The soft ticking of his favorite French clock, alongside the gentle hiss of steam from the tea kettle, formed a comforting melody. He rose with understated grace to pour himself a cup of Darjeeling tea, its warm scent mingling with the faint aroma of his carefully polished waxed moustaches. Just as he settled back into his armchair, a servant's discreet knock interrupted the quiet. "Madam," announced Mrs. Hicks, the landlady's quietly efficient companion, "there is a letter for you, delivered by hand." Poirot adjusted his pince-nez and extended a gloved hand for the envelope. It bore an embossed crest, a stylized Turnbridge House skyline surmounted by twin laurel wreaths, and was sealed with pale blue wax. Setting his teacup on its saucer, he tapped the seal with his ornate letter opener. The parchment within was penned in a fluid hand. "Monsieur Hercule Poirot. You are cordially invited to Turnbridge House in Kent to assist with the unveiling of my newly acquired Sevres porcelain collection. In light of recent unsettling rumors regarding a certain missing vase, your expertise is most earnestly requested. Yours faithfully, Lady Beatrice Grantham." A flicker of intrigue lit Poirot's dark, intelligent eyes. Rare indeed was an opportunity to examine Sevres where, and rarer still to investigate a whispered scandal in its midst. He rang for his valet, Hastings, who bustled in with an expression of eager anticipation. "Watson's departure for the continent has left me at your disposal, mon ami," Hastings declared cheerfully as he began packing the detective's travel cloak and bowler hat. "Shall I have the carriage at 8? "A huge yours, OUI, Poirot replied, relishing the pleasing symmetry of the hour. "We shall arrive at Turnbridge by midday. Be sure to bring my green umbrella, Hastings, the weather is most unpredictable." The journey to Kent was a study in contrasts. London's soot-stained façades melted into rolling fields of barley, and the clamour of omnibuses gave way to the distant bleat of sheep. Poirot leaned forward, peering through the rain-speckled window. Every detail registered with his little grey cells, the rust-coloured gateposts of Turnbridge Lodge, the neat rows of lavender lining the carriage drive, and the faint silhouette of the house itself, a Georgian manor of pale brick and white portico, looming through the mist. Upon arrival, they were met by Lady Beatrice Grantham herself. Tall and slender, she wore a tailored day dress of dove grey, her posture erect and graceful. Silvery hair was neatly arranged in a chignon, and a single sapphire brooch glinted at her throat. Yet it was the shadow in her pale blue eyes that caught Poirot's attention, a flicker of worry beneath composure. "Mon cher Monsieur Poirot," she greeted, extending a gloved hand. "Thank you for coming at such short notice. I confess, I am somewhat apprehensive." "Fear not, madam," Poirot reassured her with a slight bow. "We shall uncover truth and beauty in equal measure." Inside, the gallery was a triumph of classical elegance. High ceilings crowned with cornices, walls panelled in rich oak, and a floor of polished parquet that reflected the soft glow of recessed lighting. Rows of chairs flanked a long draped table, upon which several smaller porcelain pieces dominated the centre. Every inch bespoke Lady Grantham's refined taste, and, to Poirot's discerning eye, spoke of no expense spared. The assembled company comprised a handful of local dignitaries, the elderly Colonel Forsyth, his uniform decorations all but obsolete, the rising young Member of Parliament, James Wycliffe, whose smile seemed practised, Lady Helena Worthing, whose whispered conversation with a companion betrayed her impatience, and, at the far end of the room, a tall stranger in dark evening coat, a foreign accent that Poirot could not yet place. Mr. Alfred Ramsay, the curator, was the soul of courteous professionalism. Mid-50s, graying at the temples, he moved with purposeful calm as he announced each porcelain piece, a fameux rose garniture, a pair of delicately painted vases depicting spring blossoms, and a miniature jardiniere celebrating the harvest. Poirot noted the curator's steady hands, the faint tremor in his voice whenever his gaze fell upon the central object of tonight's intrigue. "At last, the moment we have all awaited," Ramsay intoned, stepping forward to unveil the cloth-draped display case. With theatrical flourish, he withdrew the cover, and gasps rippled around the gallery. There, upon its plush velvet cushion, stood the Cerulean Lady, a vase of incomparable beauty, its cobalt figures dancing around a white porcelain body, decorated with exquisite gilding. A hush fell. Even Poirot, who prized order above spectacle, felt his heart quicken at the sight of such craftsmanship. The soft light accentuated the delicate curves, the air within the gallery seemed to hold its breath. Then, shock shattered the piece. With a strangled gasp, Mr. Ramsay staggered backward. His right hand rose to his throat, fingers fumbling at a dark stain blooming on his crisp white shirt. Gasps of alarm swelled into shouts. Colonel Forsyth croaked, "By Jove, he's been," but never finished. Mr. Ramsay's knees buckled, eyes wide with horror, he crumpled to the floor. Poirot was upon him in an instant. He knelt, removed Ramsay's hand, and examined the throat wound, a small puncture, precise and cruel. A drop of deep red blood glistened on the parquet. Hastings called urgently for his medical bag, but Poirot's face remained calm, composed. He noted the sawdust-like flecks of porcelain blue paint on Mr. Ramsay's sleeve, as well as the fallen glass of a water carafe, its lip stained with fine, almost imperceptible blue dust. Electric panic swirled through the gallery. Lady Grantham cried out, young Wycliffe hovered in shock, and the stranger's expression was one of cold calculation. But Poirot watched every detail with unwavering attention. He straightened and addressed the room with a quiet authority that nonetheless carried to the farthest corner. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began in his cultured tones, "I implore calm. The authorities will be summoned at once. Until they arrive, I must examine the scene. I ask that no one leave this room." As attendants ushered the guests away and Hastings aided the fallen curator, Poirot's eyes swept every surface. He crouched by the shattered carafe, noting how it lay toppled at an exact angle. He inspected the display case's latch, which bore a faint scuff. He touched the stray paint chip with his finger, then raised it to his nose, recognizing the characteristic scent of fresh glaze. In that moment, Poirot's little grey cells began their precise, inexorable work. A crime so elegant in its accoutrements demanded a methodical approach. Every whisper of porcelain dust, every tremor of fabric, every footstep upon the polished floor would reveal its secret in due course. And so, in Turnbridge House's splendid gallery, against a backdrop of Sevres beauty, a murder had been committed, one that would test Poirot's renowned genius to its fullest. Chapter 2: The Methodical Approach. When dawn broke over Turnbridge House the following morning, mist lay thick upon the manicured lawns, and a hush settled over the manor as though nature itself awaited the day's revelations. Within the gallery, Poirot moved with deliberate calm, lantern in hand. The carriage lights had been extinguished, only the pale morning light filtered through tall windows, illuminating motes of dust drifting like wavering ghosts. He surveyed the scene where Mr. Ramsay had fallen, methodical and unhurried, as if conducting a ritual of discovery. First, Poirot knelt beside the spot where the curator's body had lain. He noted the exact position of the scattering of porcelain blue paint dust on the polished parquet. With the tip of a gloved finger, he traced a faint arc of particles that led toward the display case. He murmured to Hastings, "Observe, mon ami, the trajectory of these fragments. They tell us not only where the victim stood but where the fatal object was handled." Hastings leaned forward, peering at the dust as Poirot continued. The very symmetry of its distribution suggests deliberate placement, a clue most telling. Poirot then paused before the display case. He ran a measuring tape across the height of the latch, noting its unusual scuff mark exactly 22 inches from the floor. He placed a small ruler horizontally against the glass, measuring the minute gap between panes where something had pressed through. The attacker, he explained softly, must have manipulated the latch from within the case, requiring not only dexterity but precise calculation. See how the latch bears a faint groove, evidence of repeated engagement. He rose and surveyed the overturned water carafe. Hastings, have you noted the base's peculiar weight? The valet lifted it carefully. At first glance, the carafe seemed ordinary, but when pointed out the shifted center of gravity, Hastings reacted in surprise. The bottom has been weighted, sir, he said. See how it's slightly heavier on one side. Exactly, agreed Poirot. A subtle mechanism to ensure the carafe would tip when dislodged in a certain manner. The explosion of sound would distract any observer, and the falling glass might mask the true intent, poison, perhaps, or, as in this lamentable case, a sudden blow. Poirot touched the broken carafe's rim and pointed to a thin smear of residue. He carefully scraped a tiny sample onto a glass slide. We shall have this analyzed. The color closely resembles the Sevres glaze. It seems our adversary wished to implicate someone handling the exhibits. Hastings looked puzzled. But why stage it so theatrically, sir? With dramatics, one hopes to conceal the simplicity of the act. Yet, as always, drama leaves more traces. Now, Hastings, let us speak to the staff and guests, one at a time. I shall begin with Lady Grantham. They found Lady Beatrice in the morning room, draped in a silk dressing gown of icy blue. Her face was pale, but her posture remained poised. She poured herself a cup of tea as Poirot entered. Madam, he began, you did not sleep well. Lady Grantham shook her head. My thoughts were clouded with worry. Alfred and I corresponded only yesterday. He seemed troubled. I cannot imagine why. He loved this collection. Did he say what troubled him? She paused, pressing her hands to the delicate lace at her throat. He received a telegram late last night. He spoke to me in hurried tones but refused to show it. It concerned the provenance of the Cerulean Lady, he said. She looked away. He was uneasy. Poirot's mind ticked. A telegram, delivered by hand, at such an hour. Curious. He noted the shape of the envelope imprinted on a side table. May I? Lady Grantham retrieved the crumpled paper for him. He examined the postmark, no stamp, only an official imprimatur. Delivered from London, he reflected, yet the courier had time to reach Turnbridge by midnight. This was arranged in advance, by someone with local knowledge. Next, Poirot invited Miss Evelyn Shaw, Lady Grantham's assistant, to the gallery. She arrived in morning grey, her hands clasped tightly before her. Poirot led her beside the shattered carafe. Mademoiselle, he said gently, can you tell me why you were the last to leave the gallery last night? She swallowed. I was correcting the catalogue. Mr. Ramsay asked me to ensure the dimensions matched his notes. She glanced at the display case, breathing shallowly. He was most particular about that vase. He said it was the last survivor of its pair, destroyed during the Revolution. And did you notice anything unusual as you worked? She shivered. I thought I heard a soft click, a latch. I looked up to see someone's silhouette behind the case, but I thought it was Mr. Ramsay himself. She touched her notebook, heavy with sketches. I did not see a face. Poirot tapped his chin. Your notebook, may I look? She handed over the slender volume. Opening it, Poirot found detailed line drawings of the Cerulean Lady's pattern, with notes in Ramsay's hand. One sketch was precisely rendered, but another had erased lines. Using his pince-nez, Poirot searched the margins and uncovered a faint graphite smudge matching the broken corner of the display case's scuff. You drew that after midnight, yes? She hesitated, then nodded. I wanted to memorize the pattern. Monsieur Duval had asked me to confirm a detail. Monsieur Duval, the tall stranger, was their next subject. He stood in the greenhouse, admiring a newly bloomed rose. Poirot found him arranging a sprig of foliage in his lapel. Approaching with unhurried politeness, Poirot asked, Monsieur, you are an ardent collector, I understand. May I inquire how you learned of this private exhibition? Duval's accent was refined, yet indecipherable. I received word through mutual acquaintances in Paris and London. Your Sevres collection, Lady Grantham's reputation, they assured me this event would be most significant. He smiled thinly. I wished to secure a piece for my own salon. Did you speak to Mr. Ramsay about the Cerulean Lady? Duval's brow flickered. Merely a brief discussion. He was reticent. He found me persistent. He glanced at the greenhouse's glass panes. I admire your roses, Lady Grantham. Their thorny stems, the way they conceal their beauty. He smiled again, but the effect was unsettling. Poirot's moustache quivered. Beauty conceals many things, yes. Yet thorns may wound. He offered Duval a measured look. And have you handled any of the porcelain? Duval gestured to his gloves. Gloves, always. I would not soil my hands, and never without permission. Satisfied, Poirot moved on to the gardener, Mr. Parker, who was reshaping a box hedge in the courtyard. Under Poirot's calm questioning, Parker admitted seeing a figure in a dark cloak enter the gallery through the side door at 10:30. The porter Jenkins had opened it, mistaking the stranger for a servant. Parker's voice quavered as he described how the figure bent over the case, illuminated only by the faint glow of a lantern. Poirot noted each detail, the height of the stranger, the soft soles of their shoes, the way the cloak's hem brushed the floor. And no sound of speech. Only the click of the latch. As the morning wore on, Poirot retired to Lady Grantham's study, where he spread his notes and sketches across a mahogany desk. The wax-sealed telegram, the chipped paint fragments, the weighted carafe, the scuff on the latch, all lay before him like pieces of a delicate puzzle. He smoothed his moustache and closed his eyes in concentration. In the quiet, his little grey cells worked tirelessly, aligning motive with opportunity, method with means. Hastings entered with a tray holding fresh tea and a solicitor's call. Poirot accepted the cup but remained deep in thought. My friend, he said softly, observe how each clue on its own might mislead. The smear of glaze implies sabotage, the telegram hints at blackmail, the figure in the cloak suggests a nighttime intruder. But the truth, as always, is hidden in the harmony of these details. He rose, smoothing his jacket. I shall need to revisit the display case with the curator's assistant, the locksmith, and, if possible, the forger who crafted our second vase. Hastings looked startled. A second vase, sir? Poirot nodded. Ah, yes. We have reason to believe the original was removed and replaced, by someone who wished to sow confusion. I suspect we shall find the replica in plain sight. Thus, armed with precise measurements, eyewitness accounts, and microscopic traces of pigment, Poirot's methodical approach began to crystallize. As dusk approached, he would gather further evidence, interrogating servants, examining the forger's tools, and tracing the telegram's route. Each step, each calculation, brought him closer to unveiling the mind behind this elaborate charade. In the hush of Turnbridge House, the stage was set for a detective who prized order above all. With little left to chance and every detail accounted for, Hercule Poirot pressed onward, confident that his methodical approach would soon reveal the murderer's identity. Chapter 3: Subtle Clues and Hidden Motives. The following morning, a pale sun filtered through Turnbridge House's mullioned windows, casting long, slender bands of light across the gallery floor. Dust motes swirled in the shafts, each a silent witness to the tragedy that had taken place. Poirot stood before the display case, his posture as composed as ever, his keen eyes absorbing every nuance of the scene. Though the authorities had come and gone, sealing the room with tape and making their inquiries, Poirot alone remained convinced that the gallery held further secrets yet to be uncovered. He began with the display case itself. Fresh from his measurements the evening before, Poirot now examined the interior woodwork and brass fittings with a jeweler's loupe. He discovered nearly imperceptible scrapes on the underside of the shelf, a trace of a tool being slid in to prise something loose. He ran a gloved finger across the grain of the wood and felt the slight depression where the clasp had been forced. Closing one eye, he peered at the latch mechanism and noted a fine horizontal scratch, as though a slender wire or blade had been drawn across it. "Remarkable, n'est-ce pas, Hastings?" he murmured when his valet approached. "Our perpetrator was no bungler. The latch was manipulated from within, yet he or she took great care to restore its outward appearance. Such fastidiousness suggests more than simple theft, perhaps a desire to hide the true method or to implicate another party." Hastings nodded agreeably, though he looked puzzled. "You think someone wanted us looking in the wrong direction, sir?" "Exactement." Poirot tapped the brass plate. Presto, the red herring. Turning, Poirot moved to inspect the scattered fragments of blue paint on the floor. Before, he had simply noted their trajectory, now he studied their shape. Each shard was a sliver of glaze, triangular in form, and he realized they matched precisely the angular patterns on the Sevres vase's rim. With delicate precision, he pressed the fragments to a piece of tracing paper, overlaying their outlines upon a printed illustration of the vase. The shapes fitted perfectly. But why leave these pieces here? Hastings wondered. Mon ami, because our criminal wishes us to believe the vase was broken in the struggle. Yet the shards are too few to account for the damage such a fall would cause. Only the rim was targeted. The remainder of the vase is unaccounted for. Hastings blinked. So the vase itself has vanished. Ah, but is that so? Or might it have been removed beforehand, replaced with a clever forgery, one we have yet to locate? Poirot smiled beneath his waxed moustaches. We must search elsewhere. He next scrutinized the telegram recovered from Mr. Ramsay's pocket. Under magnification, Poirot found a faint smudge of perfume along the lower flap, imperceptible to most noses but unmistakable to his. He traced its outline and murmured, "A floral eau de cologne, imported from Grasse." Such scents are rare in the provinces, likely belonging to Lady Grantham herself. Yet the handwriting is not hers. Our sender wished to conceal identity while invoking the prestige of Turnbridge. Hastings peered at the telegram. Could someone have used her paper to get close to Mr. Ramsay? Precisely. An inside job, arranged by someone granted access to her desk. Poirot rose, reaching for his walking stick. Let us then speak once more with the household. Perhaps new information has surfaced overnight. Their first visit was to Mrs. Fletcher, the housekeeper. She met them in the servants' hall, where trays of tea and toast awaited. Her face was drawn, but she poured the tea with practiced efficiency. Poirot accepted a cup and set about his questions with gentle courtesy. "Madam, has any member of the staff observed unusual comings and goings last night?" Mrs. Fletcher glanced down at her well-worn apron. "I heard footsteps in the gallery corridor after the household was retired. I thought it odd, but believed it to be Jenkins the porter tidying up." She paused. "And earlier, I found the gardener, Mr. Parker, standing by the side door as though expecting someone." "Did Mr. Parker say why he lingered?" She shook her head. "He was too flustered to explain." Poirot's moustaches twitched. "We shall confirm this with Mr. Parker directly." He sipped his tea. "And what of your own duties? Did anything strike you as amiss in Lady Grantham's rooms?" The housekeeper hesitated. "Just some missing stationery, a small packet of monogrammed note paper. I searched the desk drawers but found the packet gone." She dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Lady Grantham seemed upset, but she blamed the postman. "Aha," murmured Poirot. "And yet our telegram bore no postmark. Therein lies our contradiction." He rose to leave. "Merci, madam. You have been most helpful." In the corridor, Hastings whispered, "The plot thickens, sir. The gardener and porter both lingered by that door, and now paper vanishes. Someone is orchestrating every detail." Poirot nodded. Sigh. Now, to the gardener's domain. They found Mr. Parker in the walled kitchen garden, attending to a row of climbing roses. He was a lean man with dirt-stained hands and a watchful gaze. Poirot approached him with calm civility. "Monsieur Parker, you mentioned finding someone at the side entrance last night." Parker straightened. "Yes, sir. I locked up just after 10. When I returned 10 minutes later, I saw a dark figure waiting. It was too shadowy to identify. The lodge gate had been unlocked, so I assumed it was Lady Grantham's carriage retiring late. I said nothing. Did you notice anything unusual about their gait or clothing?" Parker frowned. "They wore soft slippers, like an indoor shoe. Their coat was long, made of felt or some such. And I caught the faintest whiff of perfume, like flowers in blossom." Poirot's lips curved. "Perfume of grass, same scent as on the telegram." He tapped his temple. "Our suspect leaves a trail of elegance, yet tries to conceal beneath shadows." His final interview was with Jenkins, the porter, who looked thoroughly shaken. Jenkins admitted unlocking the side door for someone he took to be Lady Grantham's maid. "It was too dark to see their face," he said. "They had business in the gallery and insisted it was urgent." "Did you ask them their name?" Poirot inquired. Jenkins shook his head. "They spoke in a quiet voice and slipped inside before I could answer." Poirot studied him. "And none of the household staff can confirm the identity of this maid?" Jenkins glanced anxiously toward the kitchen door. "The only maid who might leave at that hour was Miss Shaw." A flash of anticipation passed through Poirot's eyes. "Is it possible, mademoiselle, you left the gallery unobserved to deliver this telegram yourself?" He held up the crumpled paper. Miss Shaw, summoned moments later, turned a delicate shade of white. "I did not kill Mr. Ramsay," she protested. "But I confess I took the telegram," her voice faltered. "He sent it to me. He asked me to read it and then burn it, for fear it might cause alarming gossip." Poirot inclined his head. "Gossip can be a dangerous thing, OUI. And yet, you did not destroy it. You left it in your pocket." She covered her face with trembling hands. "I panicked. I could not bring myself to show it to Lady Grantham. I was afraid. Fear can cloud our better judgment, Poirot agreed. And yet, your actions have provided a crucial clue. He stepped back, addressing the assembled staff. We now know that the telegram was delivered by someone with access to Lady Grantham's stationery. We know the vase was replaced, and that paint fragments were left as a distraction. We know also that the perpetrator is familiar with the household's routines and capable of forging documents and objects. He turned to Hastings with a glint in his eye. And so, mon ami, we must seek the forger's workshop, examine the replica vase itself, and trace the perfume to its source. Soon, every hidden motive will be laid bare. As the sun climbed higher, Poirot's little grey cells worked with renewed vigour. Each subtle clue and confession had drawn him nearer to the heart of the mystery. Yet he felt certain the final pieces would not fall into place until he confronted the mastermind behind the elegant deception, one whose hidden motive might prove more startling than any forgery. Chapter 4: Psychological Acumen at Play. Late morning sunlight filtered through the lace curtains of Lady Grantham's drawing room, casting intricate patterns on the soft carpets. The scent of freshly brewed Darjeeling tea mingled with lavender from a vase on the mantelpiece. Poirot, impeccably dressed in his dark morning coat, sat serenely on a damask settee, legs crossed, perfect posture maintained. Before him rested a silver tray bearing delicate china cups, a sugar basin, and a small milk jug. One by one, he invited the principal players to join him for tea, seeking to unravel their motives not through accusation, but through subtle observation and carefully posed conversation. Miss Evelyn Shaw. Miss Shaw entered first, her face still pale from recent events, eyes rimmed with fatigue. She seated herself demurely, hands folded in her lap. Poirot poured tea with a flourish and slipped her a cup. Mademoiselle, he began, in his soft Belgian accent, you have been of great assistance thus far. But pray tell me, what first drew you to the world of art? She smiled wanly. I've loved art since childhood, monsieur. My father was an amateur painter and encouraged me to sketch. Working with porcelain brings a tactile joy, every surface so smooth, every design telling a story. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. And the Cerulean Lady, its story, had you heard before Mr. Ramsay showed it to you? Miss Shaw traced the rim of her cup. He told me of its narrow escape from revolutionaries. I felt honored to study its pattern. I confess, I spent many nights copying its motifs. And did you ever envy the vase itself? Poirot asked quietly. Her fingers stilled. Envy? No, perhaps admiration, yes. But envy is too strong a word. He watched her eyes. Admiration can become passion, n'est-ce pas? And passion, in extremis, can lead to unexpected actions. His gaze was gentle but piercing. Miss Shaw drew a sharp breath and set down her cup. I would never harm Mr. Ramsay, she whispered. But I envied his knowledge, his closeness to the pieces. I wanted his respect. Poirot inclined his head. Yet the respect of a man may be won by craft, but love is wrought by the heart alone. Monsieur Duval. Next, Poirot asked Duval to join them, and the collector entered in crisp attire, his tall frame imposing against the pastel wallpaper. He accepted a cup of tea with a refined nod. Monsieur Duval, Poirot began, you have travelled far in pursuit of rare porcelain. What is it that drives you? Duval's eyes glimmered. The thrill of the chase, monsieur. The knowledge that only a lucky few will ever behold such treasures. And the Cerulean Lady? Poirot asked softly. What thrill would its possession bring? Duval paused, finger brushing the rim of his cup. ownership, he said at last, confers power. The power to influence, to impress, to leave one's mark on history. Poirot leaned forward. Indeed. Yet power can also corrupt. One might risk much to attain it. Duval's composure faltered for the briefest instant, his knuckles whitening around the cup handle, before he mastered his expression. Risk is inherent in collecting. One cannot admire beauty without courting danger. Poirot allowed a faint smile. True. And yet, it is often the unseen danger, within the human heart, that proves most perilous. Mrs. Fletcher. The turn of Mrs. Fletcher, the housekeeper, was next. She entered the drawing-room with a practised curtsy, her apron crisp but her cheeks flushed. Poirot poured her tea and watched as she accepted it with trembling hands. Madam Fletcher, he addressed her kindly, you have devoted many years to this household. You know its rhythms better than any. Tell me, have you ever suspected friction between Mr. Ramsay and any of the staff? She swallowed. Oh, monsieur, they all adored him. He was strict, yes, but fair. Only Miss Shaw seemed uneasy in his presence. Poirot's moustache twitched. Uneasy? In what way? The housekeeper dabbed at her eyes. She would linger after everyone left, muttering to herself, sketching the vase. I thought it sweet, an assistant's dedication. I did not suspect malice. He inclined his head. Dedication can be a cloak for darker impulses. Mrs. Fletcher looked mortified. I beg your pardon, monsieur. I meant no offence. None taken, Poirot replied gently. It is my task to disentangle what appears innocent from what may not be. Lady Beatrice Grantham. Finally, Poirot requested Lady Grantham's presence. The hostess entered quietly, her posture regal yet weary. She accepted the last cup of tea, her gloved hands resting on its saucer. Lady Grantham, Poirot began with deference, you are a woman of impeccable taste, yet you summoned me with evident distress. Would you share what weighs on your mind? She exhaled slowly. The vase, and its looming history. I have invested not only wealth but pride in this collection. To think it could harbor scandal, her voice broke. Poirot reached across and placed a hand over hers. Madam, pride is a powerful motivator. One might take extreme measures to protect reputation. She withdrew her hand gently. I confess, I feared the vase's provenance was doubtful. I obtained it from an intermediary who insisted it was genuine. I worried Mr. Ramsay would discover the truth and withdraw his support. I see, said Poirot softly. And did you ever consider what you might do if the truth emerged? Her eyes filled with tears. I would have done anything to keep the secret buried. Poirot nodded gravely. Even commit an act from which there is no return. Synthesis of souls. As the quartet dispersed, Poirot sat back and contemplated the tableau. Each person had confessed a shade of motive, Miss Shaw's envy and passion, Duval's hunger for power, Mrs. Fletcher's unwitting complicity, and Lady Grantham's fear for her reputation. Yet whom, among them, possessed both the means and the will to orchestrate murder and forgery? He rose and walked to the window, gazing out at the rose garden beyond. The flowers bloomed in vivid colors, yet beneath each petal lay thorns. Such was the human heart, an exquisite bloom concealing jagged edges. Poirot's little grey cells assembled the fragments of psychology like pieces of a mosaic. Envy, Miss Shaw's nightly vigils, her meticulous sketches, her tremor when speaking of Ramsay's favour. Power, Duval's relentless pursuit of exclusivity, his admission that beauty yields influence. Complicity, Mrs. Fletcher's missing stationery, her misplaced trust in staff routines. Fear, Lady Grantham's anxiety about scandal, the late-night telegram, her secret cache of paper. And underpinning all, a shared reverence for the Cerulean Lady, its beauty, its history, its worth beyond mere currency. Yet one element remained elusive, the forger's workshop, the hidden replica, the precise moment the original vanished. Poirot crushed his gloved hands together, a spark of triumph in his eyes. "I must visit the salle de peinture," he mused aloud, referring to the small studio off the gallery where Miss Shaw often worked. "There, among brushes and pigments, lies evidence of our forger's hand." Hastings appeared at the door. "Shall I summon the locksmith to demonstrate the latch once more, sir?" "No, Hastings," Poirot replied, his moustache quivering with satisfaction. "We shall instead examine familiar surroundings through fresh eyes. The psychology of the mind often reveals more than the mechanics of a lock." With measured steps, he left the drawing room, ready to confront the workshop where subtle clues awaited. For in the interplay of human hearts, fear, envy, ambition, loyalty, he would discern the invisible hand that had played a deadly game. And when that hand was revealed, it would lead him closer to the core of the mystery than any paint shard or forged wax seal. Chapter 5: A Red Herring Unmasked. Late afternoon light filtered through the tall windows of Turnbridge House's gallery, illuminating the polished parquet and the gleaming porcelain stands. The soft ticking of a grandfather clock echoed in the hush that had fallen over the assembled household: Lady Grantham, Miss Shaw, Monsieur Duval, Mrs. Fletcher, Mr. Parker, and Jenkins the porter. Even Hastings stood at the periphery, dutifully taking notes as Poirot prepared his demonstration. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice calm but commanding attention. "This afternoon, we shall test our theories concerning the tragic events of that dreadful evening. I ask you all to observe closely and with open minds." He moved to the shelf where the broken fragments of the water carafe lay on a velvet cloth, their jagged edges catching the light. With gloved hands, he picked up one of the larger shards. "Observe this piece," he said, pressing it gently between finger and thumb. The carafe was weighted deliberately at its base. "See how the center of gravity shifts when one tilts it." He placed the shard atop a small wooden block and demonstrated the tilt. The audience leaned forward. Ensuring that, once the carafe is proffered at a certain angle, it topples with dramatic force. Poirot set the shard down and retrieved an unbroken carafe of identical design. Filling it with a measured quantity of water, he arranged it atop a high shelf that ran along the east wall. Beneath it, he placed a soft cushion to muffle the glass's fall. "Now," Poirot continued, "I invite Jenkins to assist me." The porter stepped forward, pale and uncertain, wiping his hands on his waistcoat. Poirot guided him to a marked spot on the parquet where Mr. Ramsay had stood. "Hold the carafe here," Poirot instructed, placing it in Jenkins's trembling grasp. Then, with a gentle motion, tip it toward the display case. Jenkins obeyed. With a theatrical flourish, and perhaps a lingering echo of the murderer's own precision, he tipped the carafe. It shattered upon the cushion, shards flying and clattering in a metallic chorus. A soft gasp ran through the audience. "Excellent, monsieur," said Poirot, nodding. "Now observe the latch of the display case." He pointed to the brass catch, which bore a faint groove along its edge. With the carafe's sound distracting any observers, one could slip inside, draw this latch upward, and remove the original vase. Thereafter, the latch could be restored, leaving no outward sign of tampering save this fine scratch. Poirot tapped the groove with his fingertip. "This is exactly the scuff I noted upon close inspection." The murderer relied upon noise and misdirection, classic elements of a well-staged red herring. He turned to Jenkins. "You, my good man, were commanded to topple the carafe that night. You say you opened the door for a maid you did not recognize. But you had no motive to kill Mr. Ramsay. Jenkins's shoulders slumped. I swear, sir, I knew nothing of any plan. The stranger handed me a note, her handwriting. I thought it Lady Grantham's maid, come to fetch a missing catalogue. Poirot inclined his head. A convenient deception. Yet our culprit depended upon you to play the fall guy. Hence your selection, dutiful, honest, but easily misled. A perfect red herring. Lady Grantham's face grew ashen. Miss Shaw pressed a hand to her mouth. Monsieur Duval's eyes glittered with newfound interest. Poirot allowed the silence to linger, watching each expression flicker. Now, he said gently, we have established how the scene of the crime was manipulated. But what of the vase itself? The Cerulean Lady vanished that night, replaced with an exacting forgery. Where, then, is the original? He strode to the center of the gallery and retrieved the draped cloth that still covered the case. With a swift motion, he whipped it away. Beneath lay the replica vase, a masterful imitation in every respect save one. The underside bore the distinctive impressed mark of Sevres 1756, but the glaze around it was too smooth, lacking the fine hairline crack that the genuine article had acquired with age. Poirot tapped the base with a small metal probe. Listen to its ring. He gave the vase a light tap. The hollow chime was subtly different from the crisp, brittle tone of true antique porcelain. He nodded to Hastings. Fetch the original. Within moments, Hastings returned carrying a small, velvet-lined box. From it, he produced a real Cerulean Lady, delicate yet weighty, its surface bearing minute fissures and the slight irregularities of centuries. The assembled guests murmured as Poirot lifted the genuine vase and held it aloft. Note the color of the glaze within this crack here, he said, running his finger across a hairline mark at the vase's foot rim. A deeper azure, mingled with a hint of amber from successive restorations. He replaced the original within its box. Our forger could never reproduce the vase's living history. Miss Shaw's lips trembled. But where did the original go? Poirot's dark eyes gleamed. Patience, mademoiselle. The misdirection served not only to mask the murder but to cloak the vase's removal. I suspect it remains within these very walls, concealed by someone intimate with the household and confident no one would look there. He paused, surveying the faces around him. We have dispelled the red herring, yet our mystery deepens. Who stands to gain by silencing Mr. Ramsay and appropriating the Cerulean Lady? What secret does this vase conceal that warranted such drastic measures? At that moment, Jenkins stepped back into the shadows, relief mingling with shame in his eyes. He had played his part unwittingly, and now stood exonerated of direct complicity. Yet the real adversary remained at large, one who had manipulated trusted hands to further a hidden agenda. Lord Hollow, the room fell silent. The unspoken question hovered in the air, which among us could wield such cunning? Poirot turned to Hastings. Mon ami, we must now turn our attention to the forger's lair. The atelier where porcelain is studied, sketched, and replicated. If my instincts are true, the tools of this crime lie waiting in plain sight. As he spoke, Hastings caught sight of a half-concealed door at the far end of the gallery, previously unnoticed by all except the detective. Its surface was painted to match the paneling so precisely that it would not have betrayed its presence to any but the most observant. Poirot laid a finger to his lips. Follow me, Hastings, but quietly. We shall see what lies beyond. With measured steps, they approached the hidden door. Poirot's hand touched its latch, and he paused, listening for any sound beyond. Then, with a slight turn, he opened the door into a narrow studio lit by a single oil lamp. The air inside smelled of turpentine and kill dust. "Ah," Poirot whispered, stepping in and running his gaze across the room. Shelves lined the walls, heavy with pigments, brushes, and porcelain fragments. In the center sat a workbench strewn with sketches, copies of Sevres pieces, including the Cerulean Lady, some complete, others hastily annotated with measurements. Hastings cleared his throat softly. "It appears, sir, our forger has been less careful than we thought." Poirot's lips curved into a small smile. "Indeed, Hastings." While the murderer staged a grand misdirection in the gallery, he or she neglected the most fundamental rule: never leave the tools of your trade behind. He gestured to a battered wooden palette stained with cobalt oxide. "These, my friend, the fingerprints of our criminal mastermind." He turned back to the hidden doorway, as if inviting the rest of the household to join them. "Now," he said, "we possess both the means by which the crime was committed and the atelier in which it was conceived. Soon, I shall reveal the person who orchestrated this entire drama." As Jenkins closed the hidden door behind them, the gallery beyond remained bathed in dwindling light, the shattered carafe and forged vase laid bare. For all the illusion of security, the web of deception was unraveling. And at its center stood a detective whose little grey cells were ready to ensnare the culprit in the final act. Chapter 6: Connecting the Dots. The dawn light that streamed into Turnbridge House's gallery illuminated not only the fine porcelain pedestals but also the faintest traces of human endeavor: dust on a chair leg, the smudge of a fingerprint on a glass frame, the whisper of a footprint. Poirot, seated behind the long draped table, surveyed his gathered notes and sketches. Before him lay the photographer's proofs of the broken carafe, the facsimile telegram, and Hastings's neat transcriptions of each suspect's account. Today, he would weave these disparate threads into a coherent tapestry. Poirot rose and invited the key players back into the gallery. Lady Grantham, Miss Shaw, Monsieur Duval, Mrs. Fletcher, Mr. Parker, and even Jenkins the porter returned dutifully, their expressions a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. Poirot motioned them to stand in a half-circle around the central display case. He cleared his throat. "My friends," he began, "we have at our disposal all the raw elements of this curious mystery: the weighted carafe, the manipulated latch, the forged vase, the atelier in which the imitation was born, and the mysterious telegram. Alone, each clue might deceive us; together, they demand explanation." He held up the atelier sketches. "Here are the precise line drawings used to craft the fake Cerulean Lady. Notice how certain details, such as the direction of the vine scrolls, are subtly different from the original. These errors betray the forger's eye, despite their overall mastery." Poirot's gaze rested on Miss Shaw. "Mademoiselle, you admitted to copying the vase's pattern. Did you ever intend for these sketches to be used in deception?" Miss Shaw's cheeks flushed. She glanced at the images, then back at Poirot. I drew them purely for study. Mr. Ramsay encouraged me." She cast her eyes downward, admitting, "If someone stole them, I did not notice." "Ah, but see here," Poirot continued, producing a small pad of tracing paper. "Certain pages have been torn away. The ragged edges match the underside of your notebook. Someone removed those sheets after you left the studio late one night." Miss Shaw's lips trembled as she covered her mouth. A hush fell. Poirot moved on swiftly. "Monsieur Duval, you claimed your interest in the vase was purely acquisitive. Yet you also confessed that beauty offers power. These sketches would have been priceless to you, yet you did not purchase them, nor did you commission a recreation through legitimate channels." He tapped the parchment. "Instead, you waited until Mr. Ramsay's death and the night of the exhibition to set your plan in motion. Why?" Duval's dark eyes flickered. He swallowed. The vase's provenance was uncertain. I feared it might vanish to some private vault. But murder, I had not imagined. Poirot inclined his head. Murder often arises not from planning but from panic when plans unravel. But let us not dwell on hypotheticals. He turned to Lady Grantham. Madam, you feared the vase's provenance was dubious. You employed intermediaries and paid handsomely. You possessed the stationery on which the telegram was written. And you alone had ready access to both the gallery and the telegram's secret hand delivery. Lady Grantham's composure wavered. She drew in a trembling breath. I wrote that telegram, monsieur. I warned Mr. Ramsay to desist from any further investigation. But I never intended harm. Poirot nodded. Fear, once it takes hold, may drive even the gentlest soul to desperate measures. He paused and produced an envelope. I found this within the drawer of your writing desk. He opened it to reveal a single letter, worn at the edges. A letter dated 2 weeks ago, addressed to your curator, signed by one George Ramsay, the late Mr. Ramsay's brother. He read aloud an excerpt. Your continued refusal to split proceeds is unjust. The vase belongs to our family equally. Deliver half the sum within 3 days or face public exposure. Shock rippled through the group. Mrs. Fletcher gasped, her hand to her heart, and even Jenkins stared wide-eyed. Poirot continued, this letter provides the motive for blackmail, and perhaps for murder. Yet it does not bear Mr. Ramsay's customary script. And it was delivered to your desk on the morning of the exhibition, yet you claimed no knowledge of its arrival. He turned to Mrs. Fletcher. Madam, did you witness anyone handling Lady Grantham's mail that day? The housekeeper hesitated, then sighed. I saw Miss Shaw enter Lady Grantham's room with a bundle of letters. She seemed distressed and left with one letter in hand. Miss Shaw's face blanched. I thought it was an invitation to tea from Mrs. Fletcher. I didn't realize. Poirot stepped to Mrs. Fletcher. Your missing stationery, madam, was the envelope for this letter originally part of that packet? She nodded, tears welling. I found only the torn flap, sir. There we have it, Poirot said softly. Our letter of blackmail was crafted using Lady Grantham's paper, delivered to Mr. Ramsay's desk, and then handled by Miss Shaw. This raises the question, who stood to benefit from contesting the vase's ownership? He pointed at Monsieur Duval. Monsieur, you desired nothing more than solitary possession of the Cerulean Lady. Cost and controversy mattered little to you. Yet you lacked direct access to Lady Grantham's desk or personal papers. You might have colluded, but on your own, you could not deliver a convincing blackmail letter. Duval swallowed and opened his mouth, but Poirot was not done. He turned to Mr. Parker. And you, the gardener, who saw the cloaked figure at the door, your description matched a tall, slender figure in soft slippers. Who among us wears such slippers in the dead of night? All eyes darted to Lady Grantham, whose silk dressing gown had indeed required such slippers the previous evening. She pressed her gloved hands to her throat. Poirot held up the letter. This letter was meant to ensure Mr. Ramsay would not reveal the vase's background, in effect, to silence him. But after failing to pay, Monsieur Ramsay confronted his blackmailer, which led to violence. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Then, with a quiet flourish, he produced a folded sheet of tracing paper found in the atelier. Unfolding it, he revealed a sketch of the gallery floor plan, annotated with positions for the weighted carafe, the hidden door, and the side entrance. Here, he announced, lies the final connecting dot. Someone planned the entire sequence with mathematical precision, only possible if one were intimately acquainted with every nook of Turnbridge House. He gazed at Lady Grantham. Madam Beatrice Grantham, you alone possess that knowledge. You wrote the telegram, fetched the letter from your desk, arranged the blackmail note's disposal, and guided Jenkins to allow the intruder entry. Lady Grantham's shoulders slumped. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Yes, she whispered. I acted out of fear for my reputation, my family's honor, the legacy of this house. I never meant to kill him. It was meant as a warning. Poirot nodded gravely. And when Mr. Ramsay recoiled and thrust the vase aside, the carafe fell instead, distracting all. In panic, you seized upon your own letter and his confusion to enact more drastic measures. He turned from her and addressed the whole company. Now we see how blackmail, fear, and ambition conspired to create murder, forgery, and a web of deception. Once the hand that wrote the note is revealed, all other actions fall into place. Lady Grantham bowed her head. Miss Shaw covered her face. Duval remained silent, eyes downcast. Mrs. Fletcher trembled, as did Jenkins. Poirot's little grey cells had, at last, connected every dot. Yet the final flourish, the precise account of events, would wait for the revelation in the gallery, where loose ends would be bound and the Cerulean Lady's true story restored. Chapter 7, Tension at Turnbridge. A heavy hush settled over Turnbridge House as evening shadows lengthened in the gallery and beyond. The household had retired early, nerves frayed by the morning's revelations. Yet sleep proved elusive for any who dwelt within those walls, none more so than Hercule Poirot himself. In his bedroom suite, he stood at the window, gazing into the rose garden where moonlight silvered petals and cast dark, twisting shadows among the canes. Something in that flickering interplay of light and dark spoke to him of hidden truths awaiting emergence. Before long, a discreet tap came upon his door. Hastings entered, cloak drawn tight against the chill, his face pale. Sir, Hastings whispered, Monsieur Duval requests your presence in the rose garden. He says it is urgent. Poirot's eyebrows rose in mild surprise. Urgent? At this hour? Very well. He donned his coat and cane, and together they descended the grand staircase and stepped out into the crisp night. The garden path was lined with century-old box hedges, their clipped forms marching in neat rows. The moon, now behind a drifting cloud, cast the scene into half-light. Only the soft crunch of gravel marked their progress until they reached a wrought iron bench beneath an arch of climbing roses. Duval sat there, coat unbuttoned, his usually immaculate cravat loosened. In his hand, he held a small leather case. When he saw Poirot and Hastings approach, he sprang to his feet, visibly shaken. Detective, I beg your pardon for this intrusion, Duval began, voice low and urgent. I have information, about the atelier, about our forger. His eyes flickered toward the shadowy gallery beyond. I feared to speak before, but after last night I cannot remain silent. Poirot inclined his head. Please speak freely, monsieur. Every revelation brings us closer to clarity. Duval opened the case to reveal a single, small porcelain shard, part of a painted scroll that matched neither the genuine vase nor the forgery displayed. Its cobalt swirl was overlaid with a golden vine motif, unusual in Sevres production. This, Duval announced, came from within my carriage. After the demonstration, I returned to the stables to fetch my cloak. I found the shard upon the seat. He closed the case, as if protecting something precious. Our forger, whoever they are, fears exposure. They planted this here to implicate me, or perhaps as a warning. Hastings stooped to pick up the shard. It's fresh, sir, he noted. The glaze still feels tacky. Poirot's little grey cells quickened. Indeed. A recent fragment. Thank you, Monsieur Duval. This suggests the forger is mobile, capable of access not only to the gallery but also to your carriage. He glanced at the dark silhouette of the house. We must secure the grounds. I will summon Jenkins. As Duval retreated to his rooms, Poirot and Hastings maneuvered through moonlit hedges toward the house. Jenkins met them at the door, lantern in hand, ready to assist. Back in the gallery, Poirot inspected the case once again. He dusted its base with a fine brush and revealed a nearly invisible footprint, size 10, soft-soled, stamped upon the marble threshold. "Aha," Poirot murmured. "The same slippered tread Parker described. Our forger is no mere artist, they are the murderer's accomplice, slipping in and out as they please." He held up the porcelain fragment. "This shard must be studied in the atelier under proper lighting. Hastings, see to it that Monsieur Duval's shard is sent there with all haste. I will await your return." Hastings departed, and Poirot retreated to the gallery's alcove, surveying the assembled suspects' portraits on the walls, ancestors of Lady Grantham, stern faces in oil, bearing witness to the house's long history. He felt the weight of those unblinking eyes as he considered the living residents below. Mrs. Fletcher's discovery. At midnight, Mrs. Fletcher crept silently into the gallery, wiping her eyes with a handkerchief. Poirot, hidden in shadow, observed her approach the display case. She placed her gloved hand upon the brass latch and pressed something small against the mechanism. The latch clicked open. Poirot stepped forward. "Madame Fletcher," he called softly. Startled, she spun around, her face stricken. "Monsieur Poirot. I did not know you were here." He crossed the room, his manner gentle. "I see you have unlocked the case." She swallowed, gathering courage. "I saw the forger's tool in the atelier, only a slender wire bent at the end. I recognized it as part of Lady Grantham's desk set. I feared another attempt this night and wished to secure the original vase." Poirot's eyes shone in the dim light. "Brava, madame. Such vigilance may yet save us further tragedy." He placed a comforting hand on her arm. "Do not venture here again unannounced. Instead, inform me or Jenkins at once if you have concerns." With a nervous nod, Mrs. Fletcher departed, leaving Poirot alone once more. An attempt on Duval's life. At 2 o'clock, Hastings returned, breathless. "Sir, the shard has been analyzed in the atelier. It matches neither vase, but corresponds to a design in Monsieur Duval's private collection, a plate he acquired last year." Poirot's face darkened. So our forger sought to implicate Duval by planting this fragment, stolen from his own holding. But why? Before Hastings could reply, a piercing cry rang out from the rose garden. Hastily, they rushed outside to find Jenkins at the archway, lantern in hand, pointing to a figure collapsed beneath the pergola. It was Duval, unconscious, with a thorn embedded in his hand and a dark liquid staining his sleeve. Poirot knelt beside him, pressing a handkerchief to the wound. He was attacked, he observed, and left here to be discovered. He turned to Hastings. "Fetch Mrs. Fletcher and a doctor at once." Hastings dashed away, and within moments Mrs. Fletcher knelt by Duval's side, administering first aid with trembling hands. Poirot examined the dark stain on Duval's sleeve. "Not blood," he muttered, taking a small glass vial from his pocket. "This is ink, thick and black. Our assailant intended to sully his sleeve, to suggest a struggle with the forger perhaps, or to further incriminate him." He added quietly, "But who among us carries ink at all hours?" He eyed Lady Grantham's writing desk in the house's glow behind them. With Duval carried inside, Hastings returned. "He is stable, sir, though shaken. Poirot nodded. Good. Now that we have witnessed an attempt on his life, the murderer grows desperate. They know we close in. He tapped his cane on the gravel. It is time to draw them out. A midnight confrontation. Poirot led Hastings back to the gallery, where he arranged the chairs in a semicircle. At the center, he placed the genuine Cerulean Lady under a glass dome. We shall convene here at dawn, he declared, and proceed with the final reckoning. Then, after a thoughtful pause, he added, but for those among us with guilty hearts, I offer one warning, the night reveals all. He strode to the hidden door of the atelier and placed his ear against it. I hear nothing, he murmured, yet his moustache quivered in satisfaction. The weight of silence. As the household drifted to their chambers, tension coiled like steel springs within Turnbridge House. No one dared move except for Poirot, who sat alone in the dark gallery, his gaze fixed upon the Cerulean Lady, its porcelain surface ghostly in the lantern light. The crimes had escalated from staged accident to blackmail, forgery, attempted murder, and now a second act of violence disguised as mischance. Each demonstration by the murderer spoke of hubris. They believed themselves invisible, yet left behind telltale fragments of their plot. Poirot rose and retrieved the fragment from Duval's carriage. He compared it to the real vase's pattern and to the forged replica. The differences were minute, the vine motif was more sinuous, the gilding slightly raised. He pocketed the shard and extinguished the lantern. In the starlit silence, he whispered, the dance quickens. And so, as Turnbridge House held its breath for the next act, Hercule Poirot prepared his final chambers for the ultimate confrontation, where the murderer's final gambit would be laid bare, and justice would, at long last, be served. Chapter 8, The Grand Devoilement. The first pale light of dawn crept through the tall windows of Turnbridge House's gallery as Hercule Poirot surveyed the assembled company. Around him stood Lady Beatrice Grantham, her sapphire brooch like a frozen tear against her dove-grey dress, Monsieur Duval, his cravat hastily retied and eyes shadowed with recent peril, Mrs. Fletcher, trembling yet dignified, Mr. Parker, rigid with apprehension, Jenkins, the porter, still shaken by his unwitting role, and, at the center of the circle, Miss Evelyn Shaw, her slender form drawn tight with tension. Hastings, notebook in hand, stood to one side. Poirot cleared his throat. In his dark morning coat and silk cravat, he cut an imposing figure. Mesdames et messieurs, he began, we have witnessed a tragedy of ambition, fear, and deception. But before justice is served, let us recount the path that led us here, and name, at last, the mind behind this intricate design. He gestured to the Cerulean Lady, now encased in glass at the gallery's heart. This vase has borne witness to many schemes, theft, forgery, blackmail, and 2 attempts on life. It seemed at one point that all clues pointed to Lady Grantham, who, in truth, did pen a warning telegram and feared reproach. Yet Miss Shaw's own hand delivered that note, under duress and belief it would protect her beloved curator's career. He paused to let his words sink in. Lady Grantham's eyes widened, but she made no sound. Next, Poirot continued, we considered Monsieur Duval, who sought sole possession of the vase. He was wrongly accused, his ink-stained sleeve and the fragment planted in his carriage mere theatrics by someone determined to divert our suspicions. Duval's cheeks flushed, but Poirot offered a small bow. You, monsieur, are free of guilt. He then turned to Mrs. Fletcher. You discovered the forger's wire and tried to open the case to protect the original. You acted in loyalty and fear, not malice. The housekeeper's lips quivered as she nodded. Mr. Parker observed the cloaked figure at the side door, Poirot said, addressing the gardener. Your description matched slippers of the atelier, yet those slippers belong to one person alone. All eyes shifted to Miss Shaw. She sank into a nearby chair, gloved hands clasped in her lap. "Let us retrace the chronology," Poirot declared. First, 2 weeks ago, the blackmail letter, bearing the forged signature of George Ramsay, appeared on Lady Grantham's desk, on her own monogrammed paper. "Miss Shaw, you removed that letter, unaware of its true nature, to prevent scandal." Miss Shaw covered her face with both hands. Poirot let the silence deepen before speaking again. When Mr. Ramsay confronted his blackmailer, believing it to be Lady Grantham, the scene became chaotic. He stumbled against the carafe, it shattered as planned, and in the ensuing confusion, you struck him with the slender wire you brought from the atelier toolkit, severing an artery in his throat. He paused, allowing Hastings to record every word. You then restored the latch and swapped the original vase for your forgery, confident that the authorities would dismiss Lady Grantham and Duval, never suspecting the assistant, whose reputation was unimpeachable. The gallery was deathly quiet. Miss Shaw's shoulders shook as she wept softly. "But there was one fatal error," Poirot said, stepping forward. "You underestimated your own passion. You left behind a footprint, your slippered sole pressed into the marble threshold, for it matched the slipper style you wore at night in the atelier. You also carried the porcelain shard from your forgery experiments into Monsieur Duval's carriage, intending to plant it there later, and you dropped it by accident when startled." At this, Jenkins let out a soft gasp. Duval pressed a hand to his mouth. Lady Grantham's eyes brimmed with sorrow. "Finally," Poirot concluded, "you attacked Monsieur Duval in the Rose Garden, hoping to eliminate the one man who could identify your shard as belonging to his own collection. Yet you only managed to prick his hand before retreating in haste." Miss Shaw rose, tear-streaked and trembling. She sank to her knees before Lady Grantham. I never meant to kill him," she sobbed. "He was my friend, my mentor. I only wanted his approval, to protect him from disgrace. I never meant for him to die." Lady Grantham stepped forward and gently lifted her assistant's chin. "Your intentions were misguided, but love alone cannot justify violence. You must face the consequences, Evelyn." As Mrs. Fletcher and Jenkins moved to support Miss Shaw, the distant sound of approaching drivers signaled the arrival of the county magistrate's officers. Poirot watched, expression serene, as Miss Shaw was gently escorted away. Turning to the remaining company, he gave a slight bow. "Mesdames et messieurs, justice will take its course. Yet let us not forget that tragedy often springs from the noblest of motives distorted by fear and jealousy. True wisdom lies in mastering one's passions before they master us." Lady Grantham offered Poirot a trembling smile. "Monsieur Poirot, I cannot thank you enough. My household shall never be the same." He inclined his head. "Madam, it has been my privilege to serve the cause of truth. The Cerulean Lady, I trust, will henceforth be cherished both for its beauty and the lessons it imparts." Hastings approached, holding the real vase in its box. He placed it gently upon the pedestal. Morning light framed its curves, gleaming like a promise of renewal. Poirot gazed at the porcelain masterpiece, then turned to his friend. "Maintenant, Hastings, we may retire. Let us hope that Turnbridge House can find peace once more." As they departed the gallery, Poirot paused and cast one last glance at the Cerulean Lady. In its serene, unblemished form, he saw the enduring power of art, and the fragile boundary between beauty and the darker recesses of the human heart.